Well, thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I rise to speak on a bill for which the Coalition has been allowed just over a week in terms of preparation to speak on what is and are significant changes to Fair Work legislation. Hundreds of pages, Mr Deputy Speaker, in fact, adding to the already hundreds of pages for which employers in this country have to wade through to try and ensure that they are not making any mistakes, any breaches, any errors when it comes to employment in this country. So this bill makes things even more complicated. In fact, 15 minutes is nowhere near enough to cover all of the elements, so I'll only stick to a few, Mr Deputy Speaker, in the time that's allotted to me. And the first thing I want to go to is the Minister, the Leader of the House, Minister Burke's claims about wage theft. Now, we've seen the Minister come to the dispatch box. I mean, it's worthy of Hollywood, Mr Deputy Speaker, lip quivering, shaking with indignation, absolute outrage, and the quotes have been something like this. "How is it possible," he says, "that it's a crime for an employee to steal from an employer, but it's not a crime for an employer to steal from an employee?" Now, I sit up here as a former employer, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I find that outrageous because last time I checked, it is illegal and it is unlawful, and wage theft can't be done legally. It just can't. Now, given the contribution from the Minister and how strongly he's pursued this line, whether it's in question time or elsewhere, I thought, well, maybe I've got this wrong. I'd better check. And this is probably the only occasion this will happen, Mr Deputy Speaker. I took the advice of the Leader of the Greens. So I googled it. Is wage theft a crime in Australia? And guess what? It popped up with all of these answers that said, yes, it was. I thought, well, a good member of parliament won't just rely on Google. I should go and ask some others for some advice. So I did. We went to the Parliamentary Library. And we asked the Parliamentary Library, is wage theft by an employer considered a crime? Yes. Well, how about that, Mr Deputy Speaker? Potential under both general criminal laws and specific wage theft offences in Victoria and Queensland. In fact, most states and territories have general criminal legislation that could be applied to underpayment of wages. Well, given my background with a trade and engineering, Mr Deputy Speaker, I like belt and braces, and this time I thought I should go for the third confirmation. So I went and checked on the Queensland Government website. Now, this is from the Office of Industrial Relations. Wage theft and wage recovery information for workers. Wage theft is a criminal offence in Queensland. How about that? Employers engage in deliberate wage theft from their employees face the risk of up to 10 years imprisonment. That sounds like a pretty big penalty to me, Mr Deputy Speaker. So I think the Minister, Minister Burke, should reconsider what he's contributing to this House. Perhaps it's a mistake. Maybe he just accidentally misled the House. Maybe it's just untrue. Maybe he didn't do the research. I don't know. But I think the Minister should reconsider the way that he's positioning this legislation, because it is already unlawful for wage theft in this country. Now, the Minister's got form when it comes to blaming the Coalition for all sorts of things. And in terms of the debate on this bill, we've seen him rail against the former Coalition's governments 9 years, and apparently we didn't do anything. Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, I thought I'd check some of that too. And guess what? Yeah, that's not right either. So in terms of wage theft, in terms of people who are treating their employees incorrectly, and I know because I was heavily involved in the establishment of this, there's this thing called Task Force Cadena. Now, Task Force Cadena, according to the Parliamentary Library, does a whole pile of things, particularly around horticulture, particularly where there are individuals who are maybe using illegal workers, who are not paying the correct rates, who are robbing them. Now, did they do any work in the period of the last Coalition government? Well, according to the Library, yes, they did. And I want to show a couple of examples, Mr Deputy Speaker, because I want to demonstrate just how misleading the proposition has been from the Minister. Here's one in October 2015. Compliance operations targeting 5 karaoke bars in Melbourne and Perth. Almost $11,000 was recovered for 19 employees who were shortchanged their minimum wages. Shortchanged their minimum wages. In December of 2016, compliance operation targeting labour hire intermediaries and employers suspected of exploiting foreign workers at agriculture in the far south-east of Melbourne. Seized more than $400,000 in cash, Mr Deputy Speaker. Now, they sound like pretty strong activities in terms of attacking those who are doing the wrong things by their employees. And for the last example, December 2017, successful criminal prosecution under Task Force Cadena resulting in the execution of warrants in May and June 16 at a citrus packing plant in New South Wales and a resident in Melbourne. A 59-year-old man pleaded guilty to 12 counts of employment-related offences, convicted on all charges and fined $100,000. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, the proposition being put forward by Minister Burke appears incorrect. So what are the real reasons? Why are they making these changes? Well, let's look at what others have said. We've seen contributions from representatives in the Business Council, from the Mining Council and a number of others. And stakeholder comments go along the way like this. The Albanese government's latest industrial relations legislation changes are some of the most extreme interventionist workplace changes ever proposed in Australia. So says Tanya Constable of the MCA. The ACCI Chief Executive Andrew McKellar. The only winners in this are union chiefs. A quote. The only winners in this are union chiefs. The only loophole this bad legislation is looking to close is that of plummeting union membership. And who is going to pay the price for that, Mr Deputy Speaker? Well, in an unfortunate turn of events, it will be employers in this country. It will be those who are struggling with the cost of living already. It will be those individuals who quite simply can't make the bills for the week because the cost of everything will go up. The cost of everything will go up. Now, we have already established that it is a crime to steal your employees' wages. And in fact, there has been prosecutions already, and we've demonstrated where that has already happened. So what are the reasons for these changes? Well, you can only say, as has been outlined by those that represent employers, it's about doing what unions want. And the changes around casual employment in particular make something which shouldn't be that difficult so incredibly complex. So incredibly complex. How can those businesses who are not large businesses, who do not employ industrial relations specialists, actually meet the requirements of the legislation? I mean, if we look at some of the descriptors, there are now 15 factors proposed to determine if you're casual. 15 factors. And the claims from the minister that the coalition government didn't do anything about this, well, we did. We made changes in government that every 12 months every employee has the opportunity to go from casual to part-time work if that is what they elect to do. Now, there are many people out there, Mr Deputy Speaker, who choose to work casually because it suits them. It suits their lifestyle. It works better for them. They like the higher rates of pay, which include, while I've got the opportunity, which include an allowance to cover their holiday pay and all of the other things that come with permanence in terms of their employment. But it's something that they want to do. But what's it really about, Mr Deputy Speaker? It is about union delegates' power. Union delegates' power. A new workplace right to protect them against employers that refuse to deal with them. Can you imagine it? Mislead them, hinder them, obstruct their rights in the workplace. Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, as a former employer, the best thing you can do in terms of your business is have the best staff you can find. Pay them well. Give them the opportunity to shine, because they are absolutely what your business is about, and without them you don't survive. Now, there are bad eggs out there, Mr Deputy Speaker, there is no doubt about it, but it's not as many as those opposite are making out. And the idea that we would have to include powers for the union delegate basically to roll in unannounced because they have a suspicion, if I recall correctly the definition. They have a suspicion, demand to see wages, kick the doors in. Seriously, Mr Deputy Speaker, if unions want more membership, well, they quite simply should do a better job. They should represent their workers in a way which more individuals will sign up with them. You can't simply legislate for people to become members of the union because of the laws that are being put forward in this place. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, I don't want to take up too much time in terms of the House because I know we've got other business to cover, but quite simply, this is not what it's about. We need simplified workplace laws in this country. We need to make it easier for people to employ, because the more Australians that are in employment, the better our country is. The more opportunities we have for individuals to start their own businesses. Can you imagine someone starting up trying to comply with some of this legislation, Mr Deputy Speaker? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages that they simply can't get across, on top of all of their other workload, including running a business, to make wages, to pay their bills and to pay their employees. It is not as easy as those opposite put forward to run business in Australia. It really isn't. And I can tell you, Mr Deputy Speaker, as someone who's had many sleepless nights about whether you make wages next week, who've cut their own salaries and their own incomes to make sure that you do, because that's what's required. There are not that many employers out there looking to do the wrong thing, and in a market where the unemployment rate is under 4%, even more so. Even more so. So let's call this for what it is. It is about paying off union bosses and providing more union powers, because we have already demonstrated it is not about wage theft, because that is covered already and exists. It is not about what those opposite put forward. It is quite simply about paying off those individuals who want to meet a union agenda. And there is a long list of demands, Mr Deputy Speaker. There is a long list of demands. So when we have an environment in which the economy has high inflation, where interest rates are increasing, where unemployment is under 4%, where mortgages are out of control, where real wages are going backwards, what is the solution from this Labor government? Their solution is to make employment harder, to make it more difficult for individuals to employ more people, to make it more complex. And I'm yet to see it. Maybe it's in there, Mr Deputy Speaker, but how on earth is Fair Work going to manage all of these additional responsibilities in terms of what they have to sign off, whether it's in a dispute or not? It is going to be a mess, and I can understand why employers are up in arms. I understand why they're going to go out and campaign against this Labor government, because these changes, they are wrong. They are the wrong direction for the country. They are the wrong direction for employers. They are the wrong direction for employees. Because, quite simply, Mr Deputy Speaker, not every employee in this country can be a union member. Not every single one wants to work in a big company with big unions and big IR and big problems. Many of them are quite happy to work for medium-sized businesses. They're quite happy to be part of family businesses. They're quite happy to contribute and continue to work as long as they are paying their bills and putting a roof over their head. And this Labor government, Mr Deputy Speaker, is making that harder, not easier, and we need to see change.
The question is that the amendments be agreed to, and I call the honourable member for Mac.